The world thought Argentina's story was finished. Not because they had fallen, not because they had become weak, but because they had already climbed the mountain. The image is burned into football history forever. December 18th, 2022, Lusail Stadium, a nation dressed in sky blue and white holding its breath. And in the center of it all stood Lionel Messi, the boy from Rosario, the player who carried the weight of a football-obsessed country on his shoulders for nearly 2 decades. The player who had heard every criticism, every insult, every comparison, every accusation that he could never do for Argentina what he did for Barcelona. Until finally, he did. Argentina became world champions. Messi lifted the trophy. The greatest football story ever told finally received its perfect ending. Or so everyone thought. Because football has a cruel habit. It never allows stories to stay finished. And now, 4 years later, as the 2026 FIFA World Cup begins across North America, a new chapter is being written. A chapter nobody expected. A chapter that begins with a question. What happens when the greatest player of all time refuses to fade away? What happens when Lionel Messi, at an age where legends are supposed to become memories, decides he still has unfinished business? And perhaps most importantly, what happens to Argentina when they still depend on him? Because make no mistake, this is not the same Argentina. Not the Argentina of Qatar. Not the Argentina that shocked the world. Not the Argentina that entered every match looking like warriors willing to die for one another. This team is different. Older in some areas, newer in others, changing, evolving, searching for a new identity. And yet, somehow, the same man remains at the center of everything, Lionel Messi. The reigning champions arrived at Arrowhead Stadium carrying the pressure that only champions understand. Every opponent wants to beat you. Every mistake becomes a headline. Every performance is compared to perfection. Algeria stood in front of them as the first obstacle. A team desperate to make history. A team determined to shock the football world. A team with absolutely nothing to lose. And for a few moments, it looked like chaos might arrive. The opening minutes exploded into life. The kind of beginning that immediately tells you this isn't going to be a normal football match. Goals, celebrations, confusion, then disbelief. Inside 8 minutes, 2 separate goals had been ruled out for offside. One from Argentina, one from Algeria. The stadium barely had time to breathe. Then came the moment that sent chills across football. Lionel Messi received the ball. One touch, a glance, a movement, and suddenly, the years disappeared. The defenders looked frozen. The stadium stood up, and the ball found the net. It was vintage Messi. The kind of goal we've seen hundreds of times, yet somehow it still feels impossible every single time. For a brief second, Argentina believed they had their dream start. But the flag was raised. No goal. The celebration died. The scoreboard remained unchanged. And almost immediately, Algeria thought they had struck back. Fares Chaibi burst forward. His low effort slipped beyond Emi Martinez. The Algerian players erupted, their fans exploded, history seemed within reach. But once again, the flag, offside, no goal. The game had become a storm, and in storms, the greatest players reveal themselves. Because Lionel Messi has spent his entire life doing one thing, turning chaos into certainty. The world has seen it for 20 years. Barcelona, Paris, Miami, Argentina. Generation after generation, manager after manager, system after system, the one constant has always been Messi finding solutions where none should exist. And on the 17th minute, he did it again. Rodrigo de Paul won the ball, looked up, and delivered a pass that sliced through Algeria's defensive shape like a knife through paper. Messi collected it, immediately driving toward the heart of the defense. No hesitation, no fear, just instinct. The defenders backed away, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, and then the left foot. That famous left foot. The foot that has broken hearts across 5 World Cups. The foot that has delivered joy to millions. The foot that refuses to grow old. He unleashed a strike of pure violence. The ball flew toward the top corner. No goalkeeper in the world was stopping it. No defender was reaching it. No scriptwriter could have written it better. Goal. Argentina 1, Algeria 0. And suddenly the stadium belonged to Lionel Messi, again. It was his 200th appearance for Argentina. Think about that for a moment. 200 times wearing the shirt of his nation. 200 times carrying expectations. 200 times answering questions nobody else could answer. And on this historic night, he was once again the difference. Not because Argentina lacked talent, far from it. they still possessed world-class players everywhere. Emiliano Martinez guarding the goal, Alexis Mac Allister controlling midfield, Lautaro Martinez leading the attack, Rodrigo de Paul doing the invisible work that makes champions possible. But despite all that talent, the spotlight still found Messi. Because some players participate in history, others create it. And as Argentina settled into their rhythm, the warning signs became impossible to ignore. The reigning champions monopolized possession, 68% of the ball. Control, authority, confidence. The kind of football that suffocates opponents. Algeria chased shadows, running, pressing, hoping, waiting. Yet the game still felt strangely dependent on one man. Every dangerous attack seemed to involve him. Every moment of creativity seemed to begin with him. Every gasp from the crowd followed him. And that's where the real question starts. Not whether Messi can still perform, clearly he can. Not whether Messi can still change matches, clearly he can. The question is whether Argentina should still need him to. Because defending a World Cup is one of the hardest tasks in sport. History proves it. Champions become targets. Every weakness becomes magnified. Every dependency becomes dangerous. And for all Argentina's brilliance, one reality remained impossible to ignore. At 39 years old, Lionel Messi still looked like their most important player. Which sounds incredible, until you realize it might also be their biggest problem. Because what happens when your greatest strength becomes your greatest dependence? What happens when the future keeps arriving, but the past refuses to leave? And what happens when the entire world begins to wonder whether Argentina can win another World Cup without relying on the greatest footballer who ever lived? As the first half drew towards its conclusion, those questions remained unanswered. But Lionel Messi wasn't finished writing his answer yet, not even close. The second half began exactly the way a World Cup match should. Fast, aggressive, unpredictable. Algeria knew they were still alive. One goal could change everything. One moment could turn pressure into panic. One mistake could shake the confidence of the defending champions. And to their credit, they refused to surrender. This wasn't a team interested in simply surviving against Argentina. They wanted to fight. They wanted to believe. They wanted to create one of those World Cup stories that football fans remember forever. Because that's what the World Cup does. Every 4 years, it reminds us that giants can fall, that favorites can fail, that history can be rewritten in 90 minutes. But there was one problem. Argentina had Lionel Messi, and Lionel Messi wasn't finished smelling history yet. Not even close. The dangerous thing about Messi has never been the goals. It has never been the dribbles. It has never even been the trophies. The dangerous thing about Messi is his timing. He always seems to know exactly when a game is slipping away, exactly when opponents start believing, exactly when he needs to remind everyone who he is. The first warning came through Lautaro Martinez. The Inter-striker found space and unleashed an effort that forced Luka Zidane into action. The goalkeeper stretched brilliantly. The save kept Algeria alive for a moment. Only for a moment, because football is cruel and the World Cup is often crueler. Just after the 60-minute marker, Alexis tried his luck from distance. The strike wasn't perfect. The goalkeeper should have dealt with it comfortably, but pressure does strange things. The ball slipped from Luka Zidane's grasp. For a fraction of a second, it sat loose inside the penalty area. A gift, a mistake, a chance. And there is perhaps no player in football history more dangerous around loose opportunities than Lionel Messi. Before anyone could react, he was already there. One touch, one finish, one goal. Argentina 2, Algeria 0. The match wasn't officially over, but everybody knew. The defending champions had taken control, and once again, it was Messi. The cameras found him immediately. The crowd erupted. His teammates surrounded him. Yet, there was something fascinating about the celebration. It wasn't wild. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't the celebration of a player surprised by greatness. It was calm, almost expected, as if scoring on the biggest stage in football had become routine, which somehow it had. For most footballers, appearing at a World Cup is a dream. For Messi, dominating them has become a habit. Think about what the world was witnessing. A player appearing in his 6th FIFA World Cup. 6. Entire generations of footballers have come and gone during his career. Teenagers who watched him win the Ballon d'Or are now retired professionals themselves. Managers have changed. Tactics have evolved. Football has transformed. And still, Messi remains. Still deciding games. still creating magic, still making defenders look ordinary, still making the impossible appear inevitable. It's almost unfair, but greatness often is. And yet, beneath the celebrations, another story was quietly developing. One that should concern Argentina because every time Messi rescued them, every time he provided the decisive moment, every time he became the solution, a difficult question grew louder. Where are the others? This isn't criticism. It's reality. Argentina have talent everywhere. Their squad is loaded with quality. Their midfield remains technically brilliant. Their defense is experienced. Their attack contains proven goal scorers. But when the moment arrives, when the pressure rises, when history is waiting, the eye still searches for Messi. And football history tells us that can become dangerous because eventually every legend reaches a point where time wins. Not because the talent disappears, not because the intelligence fades, but because football demands more than genius. It demands legs, energy, recovery, endurance, the ability to survive 7 brutal matches in less than a month, and no player, not even Messi, can escape time forever. Yet somehow on this night, he seemed determined to challenge nature itself. Only minutes after his second goal, the entire stadium rose once again. Messi found space, shifted the ball, and struck. The shot looked destined for the top corner. The hat trick seemed certain. History appeared ready. Then Luka Zidane produced something extraordinary, a full-stretch, one-handed save. The kind of save goalkeepers dream about, the kind of save that belongs in World Cup highlight reels. For a moment, the goalkeeper denied history. For a moment, because history had other plans, and Lionel Messi wasn't finished. Not tonight. Not on his 200th international appearance. Not in the opening match of another World Cup campaign. The clock continued to tick. Algeria continued to fight, but cracks were beginning to appear. The game was stretching, spaces were opening, and Argentina smelled blood. Then came the moment that transformed a great performance into a historic one. With 15 minutes remaining, Argentina launched forward on a devastating counterattack. The kind of attack that defines champions, quick, direct, ruthless. The ball moved rapidly through midfield. The Algerian defense scrambled backward. Players chased. Fans rose from their seats. Something felt inevitable, and inevitably, the ball found Messi. Of course it did. Who else? Standing near the edge of the area, he took control. One touch to settle himself, one glance towards goal, one opening. That was all he needed. The shot stayed low, precise, merciless. The goalkeeper couldn't reach it. The defenders couldn't stop it. The stadium exploded. Goal, hat trick, history, Argentina 3, Algeria 0. Messi trying to find the goal. The miracle man. Suddenly, this wasn't just another World Cup victory. This wasn't just another Messi masterclass. This was something bigger, something historic, something that connected generations. Because with that strike, Lionel Messi reached 16 World Cup goals. 16. The same number as the legendary Miroslav Klose, the highest total in World Cup history. For decades, football fans wondered whether anyone would ever challenge those records, whether anyone could maintain excellence long enough, whether anyone could dominate across multiple generations. Now the answer stood before them wearing number 10, wearing Argentina's colors, writing another chapter in a career that long ago escaped normal definitions. The record books were changing again, and they were changing because of Messi again. The frightening part? It didn't even feel surprising anymore. That may be the most incredible thing of all. Football fans have become so accustomed to witnessing miracles from Messi that historic achievements now feel normal. A hat trick at the World Cup at 39 years old on your 200th international appearance while matching the all-time scoring record. That should feel impossible. Instead, it felt familiar because Lionel Messi has spent 2 decades redefining what footballers are capable of. Yet while the football world celebrated, while headlines prepared themselves, while Argentina enjoyed the perfect opening night, the deeper question remained. The same question that followed Argentina into this tournament. The same question that won't disappear because this performance proved 2 things at once. The first is obvious. Messi is still extraordinary. Still world class, still capable of deciding World Cup matches, still capable of carrying an entire nation on his shoulders. But the second truth is far more uncomfortable. Argentina may still need him too much, and that is where the real story begins. Because the greatest threat facing Argentina at the 2026 World Cup isn't the rival nation. It's not France, it's not England, it's not Spain, it's not Brazil, it's something much more complicated. It's the possibility that the defending champions are still leaning on a football miracle, a miracle that cannot last forever. And as Argentina celebrated a perfect start, the rest of the football world watched carefully. Not just because Messi scored 3 goals, not just because he tied history, but because they saw something else. They saw a team that still revolved around one man, a man who has spent 20 years proving everyone wrong, a man who continues to defy logic, a man who continues to defeat time, but a man who sooner or later remains human. And that reality could define Argentina's entire World Cup journey. The opening battle was won. The statement had been made. The champions had arrived. And Lionel Messi had reminded the world that legends don't disappear quietly. But the biggest challenge was still ahead, because winning the first game is easy compared to defending a crown. And in the shadows of this magnificent victory, the real question was waiting. Can Argentina become world champions again? Or have they become too dependent on the greatest player football has ever seen? And that is the paradox of Argentina. The beautiful contradiction, the question that hangs over every training session, every match, every celebration, and every dream of retaining the World Cup. How can your greatest strength also be your greatest concern? Because after the final whistle against Algeria, the headlines practically wrote themselves. Messi hat-trick. Messi makes history. Messi lights up the World Cup. Messi saves Argentina again. And that's exactly the problem. The word again. Again. After everything he has already done. After every trophy, every final, every sacrifice, every moment of magic, Argentina still finds itself turning toward the same man when the lights are brightest. It's a privilege, but it's also a warning. Because football history is filled with teams that became too dependent on one superstar. Teams that looked unstoppable when that player was flying. Teams that looked ordinary when he wasn't. And Argentina cannot afford to become one of them. Not now, not at a World Cup, not when every opponent is studying them. Every manager is analyzing them. Every defender is preparing for them. The deeper this tournament goes, the harder it becomes. The spaces disappear. The mistakes vanish. The margins become microscopic. You no longer play teams hoping to survive. You play teams that believe they can become champions. And that's where Argentina's real test begins. Not against Algeria, not in the group stage, but later, when the knockout rounds arrive, when the pressure becomes unbearable. When every match feels like a final. Because eventually Argentina will meet teams capable of matching them. Teams overflowing with talent. Teams that can punish every weakness. And those teams are watching carefully. They're watching how Argentina attacks, how they defend, how they create chances, and most importantly, who they rely on. Because despite all the evolution in modern football, despite all the tactical innovations, the truth remains simple. Stop Messi, and you dramatically increase your chances. It's easier said than done, of course. Entire careers have been spent trying. Entire tactical systems have been built around it. Some of the greatest defenders in football history have failed. But World Cups aren't won by reputation. They're won by adaptation. And Argentina must prove they can adapt. That they can hurt teams in different ways. That they can survive difficult moments without waiting for Messi to rescue them. That they can become more than a team built around a legend. Because legends eventually leave. Even the greatest ones. And whether Argentina wants to think about it or not, that day is approaching. The truth is uncomfortable. For nearly 20 years, Lionel Messi has been the answer. Whenever Argentina had questions, Messi was the answer. Whenever they needed inspiration, Messi was the answer. Whenever they needed belief, Messi was the answer. Whenever they needed history, Messi was the answer. And now the defending champions are trying to solve a puzzle that very few nations have ever faced. How do you prepare for life after the greatest player of all time? The challenge isn't replacing his goals. That's impossible. It isn't replacing his assists. That's impossible too. It isn't replacing his leadership, or his experience, or his aura. Those things cannot be manufactured. The challenge is building an identity strong enough to survive without him. And perhaps that's why this World Cup feels different. Not because Messi is declining. Ironically, he's proving the opposite. Not because Argentina looks weak. They clearly don't. But because every magnificent performance from Messi creates another difficult question. How long can this continue? How many more miracles are left? How many more nights like that at Arrowhead Stadium can football possibly give us? Because let's be honest, what we witnessed against Algeria wasn't normal. It wasn't supposed to happen. A 39-year-old playing in his 6th World Cup should not be producing hat tricks. He should not be matching all-time scoring records. He should not be looking like the most dangerous player on the pitch. And yet, there he was, running toward history again, making defenders panic again, making the impossible look routine again. The football world has spent years waiting for Messi to slow down. Years waiting for age to catch up. Years predicting the end. And every time he finds another chapter, another goal, another masterpiece, another reason to believe. That's what makes this story so fascinating. Because Argentina's biggest problem isn't that Messi is finished, it's that he isn't. The rest of the team still has to grow beyond him while he continues proving he's indispensable. And that balancing act may determine whether Argentina lifts the trophy once more. If the supporting cast rises, if the midfield continues controlling games, if the attack begins sharing the burden, if the younger generation embraces responsibility, then Argentina becomes terrifying. Not just because they have Messi, but because they no longer need Messi to do everything. That's the version of Argentina that can conquer the world again. That's the version every rival fears. A champion with multiple weapons. A champion impossible to predict. A champion impossible to stop. But if every critical moment continues ending with the same solution, if every difficult match requires another Messi masterclass, if every challenge demands another Messi masterclass, then the defending champions are walking a dangerous road, because even the greatest player who has ever lived should not have to carry a nation forever. And maybe that's the true story of this World Cup. Not whether Messi can still deliver greatness. He already answered that question 3 times against Algeria. The real question is whether Argentina can become strong enough to share that greatness. Whether they can transform from Messi's team into a complete team. Whether they can write a new chapter while still honoring the old one. Because somewhere between the future and the past, between evolution and loyalty, between dependence and belief, Argentina's title defense will be decided. And perhaps that's what made that night in Kansas City so unforgettable. It wasn't just about 3 goals. It wasn't just about records. It wasn't just about history. It was about witnessing a football icon refuse to surrender to time. It was about watching a champion remind the world why his name belongs among immortals. It was about realizing that even after everything, Lionel Messi remains the center of football's biggest stage. The reigning champions have begun their journey. The world has been warned. Argentina is still dangerous. Messi is still magical. And the dream of back-to-back World Cups is still alive. But as this tournament continues, the questions will only become louder. Can Argentina defend their crown? Can the next generation step forward? Can they find a balance between yesterday's hero and tomorrow's future? Or will the fate of an entire nation once again rest on the shoulders of a man who has already given them everything? The answers are coming. The battles are coming. The defining moments are coming. And if the opening night taught us anything, it's that writing off Lionel Messi remains football's most expensive mistake. For now, the king still wears the crown. For now, the world still watches in awe. For now, Argentina still follows number 10. But World Cups aren't won in opening matches. They're won in the storms that follow, and the greatest storm is still waiting over the horizon. So as Argentina marches forward and Messi continues chasing immortality, one thing is certain. The story is far from over. And sometimes, the most dangerous version of a legend is the one everyone thought was finished.